Let's be consistent.
Welcome to the Key to Consistency podcast. I am your host, Rakia Collins, and on today's episode, we're going to be answering the big question of what is the relationship between time and consistency. So, just to go ahead and dive right into our first major topic, it's time management, right? And I know when a lot of us hear time management, we instantly think there is not enough time in the day, right? And that can be true, especially when you don't know where your time is going. You have no idea, right? Like you work, let's say a 9 to 5, or you may have two jobs and you may be a mom or a dad or a caretaker. Like you have all these different roles that you wear throughout the day to where you feel like you're getting up, you're doing things for other people most of the time, and then you go back to sleep and you're not really serving yourself the way that you'd like, right? And so, if that is you and if you're feeling that way, hopefully, as we dive into this first topic of time management, you're able to come away with some strategies and some techniques that will allow you to feel like you're gaining control of your time, right? So I'm going to start with the action step you should take, and then we're going to work our way backwards, right? So the action step you should take is do a time audit, right? And what is a time audit? A time audit is essentially doing an assessment of how do you currently spend your time, right? This involves really tracking all the activities that you perform throughout the day, looking for one, being honest, right? Let's not pretend with this. If we're going to really change the way we spend our time, we have to be honest. If you know, for example, every single day you go and you leave your job, you step outside for that 15 or 20-minute smoke break, you need to include that in your time audit. Because if we're going to be changing our lives and improving our level of consistency, we have to look at things for what they truly are. And to do this time audit effectively, you genuinely have to look at how am I spending my time? And so once you do your time audit and you truly have everything laid out, at that point, you're able to really identify, where am I wasting time? Right? Where do I have some opportunities for improvement? And so if I were to give you guys my skeleton of my own time audit, right? It's like 4:30 rather. I get up in the morning, get ready for my day, go to the gym. I'm at the gym by 5, stay from 5 to 6:30. And then from there, come home, shower, eat breakfast. Generally, I work from home, so I will start work at around 8:39, really depending on the day and how early my meetings kind of kick off. And then I'm at work from 8:39 to, I'd say, 5 or 5:30, and then from there, logging off. If I haven't had dinner, I'll go ahead and have dinner. And then I will, spend time decompressing, trying to listen to podcasts or doing some quick mindfulness things. And then I'll read the Bible, and then I'm going to bed, right? And so I do go to bed pretty early. I am in bed most days around 8:30 to 9 o'clock, right? And so that is what my day looks like. That is a rough time audit, but I would encourage you to do the same thing. I would encourage you to really take a look at your day and figure out, okay, where am I wasting time? And again, where are those opportunities for improvement? So if I were to narrow this down a little further and just focus on where current state I spend most of my time, of course, that is at my job. And so, for those of you guys who are not aware, I work from home as a project manager. And so, most of my day is really driven off of meetings. I am in a ton of meetings throughout the day. And so, because of the nature of my job, I always felt like, cutting out meetings was not a viable option for me because I have to communicate with people. I have to present. I have to be, leading these meetings and, et cetera, right? But the reality of it was that's not the case. And so I really began to cut out meetings. So in my little world, right, I have two different types of meetings. I have external meetings with customers and I have internal meetings with like my team, right? And so from an external perspective with my customers, one thing I've begun to leverage is if a customer wants to have a meeting about something, rather than having a meeting, especially if it's going to be a 15-minute meeting and it's something that really can be done quicker, I will, because we use Zoom, so I will record the question that they're asking me and answer the question in that recording, right? I have to share my screen because what I do is I work for a company that sells software. And so if they're asking a question about how to leverage the software, I'm pre-recording the meeting via Zoom and I'm sending them a Zoom link and I'm saying, hey, review this. This should answer your question, right? And although that seems very simple, I've saved myself anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, right? And if you work a 9 to 5, that's similar, doesn't even need to be in project management, but if you work a 9 to 5 and you deal with having 15 to 30 minute meetings being thrown on your calendar, you realize that is a time suck. Like, let's call it what it is. That is a time suck because that is something that can either be done via email, that can be handled in a more effective way, or we can just really Slack about this, right? And for those of you guys who don't know, sorry, Slack is something that my company leverages internally. It's an instant messaging software. Again, if you're kind of functioning in the same corporate type of world, you may use Microsoft Teams, you may use Skype, but essentially it's just an instant messaging type of software. And so that would be, one of my first, outside of doing a complete time audit of your day, when you're thinking about a 9 to 5, especially if you have one, where can you cut out those meetings, right? Another task or another thing that you could possibly develop within your day, again, focusing specifically on time management, is delegating your tasks, right? And this is a bit of a weighty topic for me because I will admit, I am a recovering control addict, right? So I used to always feel like, man, if I'm not in control of it, if I'm not doing it, it's probably going to fail or it's not going to be the best that it could be, right? And so that is a different podcast. I do have that slated for us to talk about consistency and control. But just in purposes of today's conversation, don't be afraid to delegate tasks because it is the easiest way for you to regain some time back in your day. Next up, I'd say, stop multitasking, right? And this, delegating tasks and multitasking doesn't matter if you work in corporate or if you don't, right? Irrespective of what industry you work in, you can stop multitasking. You can stop talking on the phone and typing up an email, right? Like you can stop texting on your phone to, instantly respond back to someone and then, trying to help a customer. Like multitasking is not as effective as we think it is. And a lot of studies recently have been published about how multitasking is not effective at all. And you're really not multitasking. Your brain is just switching back and forth between those tasks really quickly to where you think you're doing two things at once, but you're really not. And so because it's not effective anyway, we should just stop doing it and just really focus on, one thing at a time. And so around the lens of time management, hopefully between, conducting just a general time audit to cutting out meetings, to delegating tasks, to just stop multitasking, you found something that will be able to help you better gain control of your day and of your time. This episode is sponsored by yours truly, Rakia Collins. And if you need to be reminded to stay consistent throughout your entire day, there's no better way to do that than to have visual cues throughout your day, right? And for those visual cues, visit our merch shop. We have phone cases that remind you to be consistent. We have coffee mugs that remind you about the importance of consistency. And so visit our site at thekeytoconsistency.com, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Awesome. So, the second thing I want to address with you guys is going to be establishing consistent habits. And the first thing that we have to realize, and this is going to be individual by individual, but I can just tell on myself and say that I had to realize that I have a certain relationship with the days of the week, right? And being based in the US, elementary school, middle school, high school, it was you go to school Monday through Friday, right? I went to college after high school, and so I had a bit more flexibility in terms of when I went to school, what days I had my classes. And now being in the corporate world for the past 5 or 6 years, I am back to Monday through Friday, right? And what does that have to do with consistent habits? Well, because I work Monday through Friday for someone else, on the weekends, I, especially early on in my corporate career, began to look at those days as free days, as days where I can do whatever I want to do because I am not working for someone else, right? The problem with that, at least in my specific case, is that my ultimate goal is to not work a regular 9 to 5 and to be able to be a full-time entrepreneur. And some of you guys still may not see the connection between the days of the week and being an entrepreneur. Well, when you are an entrepreneur, your day, and especially at the beginning, when you're putting forth effort and you're doing certain things, you are the true driver of those areas, right? Like there is no boss over you telling you to get certain things done, right? And so especially now for me, because I work a 9 to 5, the weekends is where the grind has to pick up even more so because I'm doing something for myself, right? I'm not doing it for my manager to review and approve and give the green light. I'm genuinely doing this to build up my family, right? And so the days of the week really began to, and it's something that's so subtle that I really had to sit with this and say, you really look at Saturdays and Sundays as free days. You don't get up early in the morning anymore. You don't read your Bible as often on the weekends. Like you don't eat that healthy on the weekends. Like when I tell you guys Monday through Friday, I am strict with what I eat. I meal prep, I get everything together, right? And then it's like on the weekends, it's just a free for all. It's like throw your hands in the air, right? Which is the complete opposite of what we want to do, especially when we think about today's topic of time management. Saturday, it's the same 24 hours on Saturday as you have on Monday, right? It's 24 hours. So what I had to do in my specific case was begin to slowly, one, realize that you have this relationship with the weekends, and two, what are you going to do about it, right? And again, I'm going to just tell you guys what I do. I'm not saying you have to do this, but for me, because I get up Monday through Friday at 4:30 a.m., on the weekends, I get up 4:30 a.m. as well. Right? What does that allow me to do? One, that gives my body a certain level of consistency to say, this is when we get up. We get up at 4:30, right? And so from there, whether I'm reading the Bible or I'm jumping into working on the business, like I am being productive, even more productive, right? Because I have more time to do the things that are important to me on the weekends than I would do on like the days of the week. And so I would encourage you, as we talk through building those consistent habits and time, think about how you spend your time on the weekend. What are you doing? How do you see the weekend? And even if your goal isn't ultimately to become a full-time entrepreneur, your goal may be to do something else. Are you spending your time on the weekends as effectively as you should be, right? Is one of the big questions that I want you to ask yourself as we're digging deeper into those consistent habits. Because again, consistency does not know a day of the week. Consistency is just consistency, right? Reliability is just reliability. You shouldn't be more reliable rather, on Monday through Friday than you are on Saturday and Sunday, right? It shouldn't make a difference what day of the week it is, because consistency should be an intrinsic trait to who you are as a human. And so, again, just encouraging you guys to look at your days of the week and figure out how you can best structure even those weekend days to make sure that you are establishing and staying strong with those habits. As we talk through, building consistent habits, hopefully you guys are picking up a theme that consistency doesn't live in its own little world, right? Consistency has a friend, maybe even a best friend, called discipline, right? Consistency and discipline truly go hand in hand in most cases. And so if you are starting out on this journey on your own, not only do you have, me as your support, feel free to always reach out, DM me on IG at The Key to Consistency. Would love to be a part of your journey, but I'd also encourage you to build a support group around you, whether it's just your parents or even if it's your kids, right? Even if it's like someone that you're taking care of, like, invite them in your journey, because what you'll begin to realize when you have that support system, you have someone now who is able to help keep you accountable. Like, are you doing the thing that you said you were going to do, right? And I'll be transparent with this one and say that it can be a double-edged sword, because as humans, we have emotions where if we don't feel like doing something and we have a support member who's supporting us and can cheer us on and can check on us, the moment that we don't do what we said we're going to do, but we ask that person to support us and they check in on us, it becomes something where you're like angry, because it's like, well, why are you checking on me about this? Well, I didn't do it today, or I'll do it better. And then it can become a point of contention. So I would say, if you go down this route, which I would encourage you to, when you build that support group, be realistic with yourself and be honest with yourself and this person, and have those type of conversations up front. Like, hey, sometimes I may have a little attitude if you check in on me and I didn't do what I said I was going to do. It has no bearing on you. It is about me not sticking to what I said I was going to do. But that doesn't mean you stop checking on me. That doesn't mean you stop being there for me. I might have just fallen off, but I don't need you to fall off because I fell off. Right? When you're building that support group around you in an effort to develop those consistent habits, you want to make sure that you're having those type of conversations up front, because the moment that you invite someone else into your world of consistency, you're not going to instantly become a consistent person. You're still going to have some inconsistency in you. And so be patient with yourself, right? Be patient with those around you, those you love, those that you are inviting into this world with you, and you're going to be successful. And so with that, I do want to get to our third major area for, just kind of tips and strategies for how to overcome the time and consistency challenge, is going to be thinking through what to do in those moments when you are feeling overwhelmed, when you're lacking motivation, when just the fact that you feel like you have no time in the world. Those type of thoughts are going to come up in your mind, right? Because we're all human. It's going to happen, right? So one, I'd say, if you struggle with procrastination and you know that once you conduct your time audit, that, man, I really just spend a good bit of my time just staring off into space, or just sitting around doing things that aren't necessarily the most productive things for me to do, I would encourage you to try the Pomodoro technique, right? That's Pomodoro technique. And what is that, right? So at a high level, it is a technique where you do focused work for 25-minute stretches at a time, and then you have 5-minute breaks, right? And whether that's something that you can do on the weekend, because again, that's where current state you may own your own time, whether it's something that you can adopt when you get off of work during the weekdays as well. I would just encourage you to have time where if you procrastinate, okay, I'm going to give myself a few moments to procrastinate, but I also need to have these periods of time where I am truly locked in. And I think that that's why the Pomodoro technique is so effective, because it gives you the ability to say, I'm going to do what I said I was going to do and get this particular task done. However, I do need to have, just some time to kind of woosah and kind of breathe and stare out in space or scroll on Instagram or whatever you want to do when you have your 5-minute breaks. And you're not even stuck to 5 minutes, right? Like once you've researched the technique some more, and you may find that you may want to do 30-minute stretches and you may want to have 10-minute breaks, like whatever it is that works best for you. I just say, if you're struggling with procrastination, that is something that I would encourage you to try out. The next thing that, most of us as humans would struggle with when it comes to overcoming some time-related challenges is not really feeling motivated, right? Especially if you're doing something that's not very exciting. I can give you guys an example of one of my previous jobs that I had. I was working as an auditor, and I had to review like 100-something plus files because we were onboarding a new system at that particular company. And someone had to go through those files and pull out the important information so that way it could be, fed into this new system. And so, man, when I tell you guys, it was like the worst part of I think a week or so span of mine, where I just was like, I knew I was going to be sitting in front of this file cabinet. I was going to be opening up these files, and it just wasn't fun. But what do you do in situations like that where you're not really feeling motivated, but you still have to get the task done? I would encourage you to not focus on the task itself, but also focus on more so on the output, right? Like once I get this done, man, our team is going to have a great new system that's going to allow us to, save X, Y, and Z time, right? I'd say, again, if you can, leverage in that specific example I gave, the Pomodoro technique, where I'm spending X amount of minutes focusing consistently on, getting through a certain amount of files for that particular time. And then I take a few minutes pause, and then I go back and forth, right? I would encourage you to do that when you're feeling, not motivated, in instances where you can, and you're able to look at, not just what am I currently doing, but how is this going to benefit me or my team in the future, right? So I would just really encourage you guys, hopefully throughout our time together today, you've understood that with consistency, you do need to start small, number one. But number two, it's important to track your progress. And again, really, if you feel comfortable, get someone else to hold you accountable, right? Join a support group, or again, tap on your best friend's shoulder or your parents or your children and say, hey, I want to start doing this new healthy task, and I need someone to help me and support me and keep me honest, right? So those are the topics and the areas that I wanted to address with you guys today. Before we end our time together, I did, of course, want to end off with one of my favorite books in the Bible, Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 1, where it reads, "For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. Right? So, again, just on that theme of time and consistency, just remember for everything under the sun, there is a time for it. And during that time, what we can do is make sure that we spend our time effectively. Lastly, guys, remember that consistency breeds mastery and transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. And I will see you guys on our next episode. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of The Key to Consistency. We'd love for you to review this podcast wherever you are listening to it. Please feel free to follow us on Instagram at thekeytoconsistency.com. And if you enjoyed this episode and you found something that was beneficial to you, of course, please share it with a friend and someone else that you think would benefit from starting their own consistency journey.